I didn't really think about it at the time, but I did a lot of weird stuff. What's up? I'm Coach Dan Blewett. I'm a former pro pitcher, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about some mental skills techniques that I use that were very outside the box and weird. And so if you watch my YouTube channel here, I've made a lot of videos on mental skills, and I'll continue to make more. It's a passion of mine. But what you'll probably notice as mental skills gets more mainstream and more people talk about it, it starts to feel kind of cookie cutter, right? Like very formulaic. And like one of my last videos was giving a sort of framework of like, when you make a mistake or you're feeling high pressure, it's, take a deep breath, have some positive self-talk, maybe have a reset action where you tap yourself or, you do something to with your batting gloves that reminds you to just like let the mistake go and then to focus on the next thing. And then you have a mental checklist of like, what do I need to remember to do as a baseball player, right? What's my next thing? I gotta, cover first on a bunt to this side or cover that side, whatever it is. But that stuff gets kind of formulaic. But what really matters is how you end up trying all these things on and tinkering and making them yours. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because as I look back at my career, I didn't really think about it at the time, but I did a lot of weird stuff in service of being more confident and of just like finding my way as an athlete, especially in pro ball, where it's a very cutthroat world. And I was worried about getting released, which means you're cut from the team and sent home, like you're done. Dealing with a rising ERA, dealing with imposter syndrome, which is when you don't feel like you deserve the success that you have and it's going to run out pretty soon. So let's talk about a couple of these. Number one, meditated. So I'll put this photo right here, but I started meditating after my second season where I got crushed and I went to see Alan Jaeger, who's actually the guy who started Jaeger bands, those beloved bands that you strap to your arms. Alan's an amazing man, and he's a big mental skills guy, actually. So I went to one of his camps. He taught me how to meditate, and I meditated daily for like the next 5 years, for like the rest of my career. I'm not a daily meditator anymore, but I would find time before games. I would sit in my locker, if nothing else, and I would curtain my clothes in front of me, and I would just meditate for 20 minutes in my locker in this chaotic clubhouse. But I made sure that I could always find a place to do this because it was so important to me in like creating this calm sense of like driven, focused energy that I could return to on the mound. So when I was focused or when I was on the mound feeling stressed, I could take a belly breath, which is the way I'd breathe out and in from my stomach. When I meditated, I could take a belly breath on the mound and it would sort of return me to that like calm, centered place. And meditation was a really important piece of my career. And I can tell you, I felt very embarrassed many, many days because on almost all my teams, I was the only one that did this. On a couple teams, I was not, which I was thankful for. But this was not a cultural thing. But like, I'd be the weird guy sitting in Indian style, with his back up against the wall in the training room or in the clubhouse or like in some dank, corner of the ballpark, meditating. And people would walk by and I'd feel them looking at me and I'd hear them, make comments sometimes. And like, I felt subconscious about it, but I just knew it was a really important part of my game. There was even one time, I won't get too deep in this, but there was one time I was doing this in the outfield or beyond the center field walls when I was playing for Evansville, Indiana. And ants started to crawl. I was sitting on the dirt and ants started to crawl up my legs and then on my arms. And it was like, I was like, nope, you're not going to break. You're not going to break. You're just going to like, the ants aren't going to kill you. Number one, I'm like, you're just going to like trace the ants as they walk up and down your arms and your legs. And you're going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to find a way to be comfortable while you're uncomfortable right now. Because like, that's the point of meditating, right? It was the point was I'm going to make myself more mentally resilient. So I'm not going to freak out and like, swipe all these ants off me. I'm going to use the ants as like a training tool today. So that was one of the many, many things I did. But let's go to number two. Number two, one time I was reading research about how like you could cut nervousness just by smiling. So I texted my pitching coach from college, who I was always close with, still am. And I was like, Tim, one of my new things is part of my pitching routine because I don't want to be so serious. Like I'm already really serious. I just want to like cut it. I want to remind myself that like I love baseball, that I love being out there, that the pressure that I feel is not the only thing. And so after I finished my warm-ups and I walked around the mound, I got the ball back, I was going to like take 1 second and I was just going to like smile. I was going to force out a smile like a psychopath. And I was going to smile because I wanted to like trick, like, there's research that if you like smile, even if it's fake, it still makes you feel better. And I was like, I want to just like smile off the back of the mound before I pitch, just to see like just to remind myself that I've been playing this game since I was a kid. It's awesome. So that was another weird part of my journey. Number 3, this is something I took from I studied philosophy in college. I have a double major in philosophy and psychology. And so my first foray into mental skills training was reading these books that were like the samurai handbooks and martial artist handbooks, which are amazing. The book Hagakure, the book of Five Rings, The Unfettered Mind, the Tao Te Ching. Like all these books were the first thing that I read about mental skills training. And one of the ways the samurai prepared for battle was they would meditate and they would visualize themselves being cut to pieces in battle. They would visualize their own death over and over and over. Their arm hacked off, their leg hacked off, them sitting on their knees, being ready to be decapitated, right? Doing seppuku after, if they were allowed that honor. And I just was like, wow, what a crazy thing. We're taught to like not think about negative outcomes, right? But like these samurai were some of the most mentally tough people because they wanted to be as fluid with their sword play as they could in battle. That was their goal, that when they were fighting someone, they didn't think, they weren't nervous, they weren't doubting themselves. Their sword went where their sword went. They need to flow, right? That was what Taoism was all about. So these samurai they knew they had to come to terms with the fear of death. They're humans like the rest of us. They don't want to get cut in half, right? They don't want to get killed in battle and lose their family and like all these things, right? So they would meditate on this over and over and over and see themselves slashed to pieces and see the end of their life until they'd done it so many times. It was as if it had already happened. And because it already happened, they didn't need to be afraid of it anymore. And so I did this with my baseball stuff. I would visualize myself. Doing some of my meditations, I would visualize myself, scouts in the stands, big moment, bases loaded. I walk a run home. Then I walk in another run. Then I give up a bases clearing double, right? I would just envision myself getting embarrassed over and over and over. And I think honestly, it really helped me because it's like, oh, I open my eyes and I'm still here, right? This isn't life or death. And if I visualize myself giving up grand slams and walking in runs, these things that are like embarrassing and mortifying, then if I've experienced them enough time, they just don't look as scary anymore. It's like when you're in bed as a kid and like you hear creaks and noises and you're afraid there's a boogeyman beneath your bed. Then when you flip the light on, you're like, oh, it's just my room and there's like toys on the shelves and stuff. Like it's fine, right? This was kind of the same thing. So I found a lot of value visualizing myself just getting crushed. And it helped me come to terms with the fact that I'm fine either way. Real quick, do you want to support my channel and get access to hundreds of member-only baseball videos? If so, click the join button that you'll find right below and learn more about becoming a channel member. My next weird mental skills thing that I did was I would make up conversations of fans and I would like listen in on them. So I specifically remember the first time I did this. I don't know why I started doing it, but I was in Evansville, Indiana. I was leading the league in ERA. And I would be voted to my first All-Star game a couple weeks later. But I was still like doubting myself. I kind of had some imposter syndrome. I was like, you're pitching too well. Like this won't last, like that kind of stuff. And I was like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like maybe you're pitching exactly as good as you're pitching because this is how good you are, right? And so I was trying to remind myself of this. And so I imagined these two old guys, kind of like the Muppets, these two old guys in the stands, like super fans, and they're like going through the team, like a brochure, and they're like, oh, Dan Blewett's pitching today. Oh, look at his stats. He has been lights out. Oh, and he throws, low to mid 90s. He's got this fastball that when he throws up in the zone, like no one can touch it. He's got this nasty curveball. And they were just talking about how awesome I was and how they were so excited to watch me pitch. They couldn't wait that I was going to shut this team out. I was probably going to have like 15 strikeouts today. So it was a way of like talking myself up through an intermediary. And the other thing was like, a lot of it was realistic. I was pitching really well. I did have a really good curveball. I did throw really hard for a starter at that point in history. Now I throw like super slow compared to today. But those things were all real. And they're just things I wanted to remind myself of. And to be quite honest, there was probably people in the ballpark that day who did look at the brochure, saw I was pitching in my numbers, and like, whoa, this is our starting pitcher? This dude's legit. We're going to win today, right? I guarantee that conversation happened somewhere. So it's like, why am I feeling so nervous if fans are excited that I'm pitching, right? Think about your favorite MLB pitcher. You go to watch them pitch. You're so excited that they're pitching. You're like, oh, Clayton Kershaw's pitching today. We're going to win, right? Like, and so I was just trying to have that conversation for myself. And I don't know why I started doing it. It just like popped into my brain and it was valuable. It helped me. So that was one of the other interesting things that I did. And my last one is I did this thing called, I'll call positive comparison. But basically it was kind of the same kind of thing where Cole Hamels was the example that I used because he was still pitching in the majors at that time. And we had a couple similarities. Like we both threw like 92, 94. He threw a little bit harder than that at different periods in his career, but he had a really nasty curveball. That was what he was known for. And I also had a really nasty curveball. So when I was doubting myself, I would ask no one in particular. I'd be like, what if Cole Hamels was pitching today, right? What if Cole Hamels came onto our team and was pitching against, this independent team? How would other people think we were going to do today? They'd be like, oh, the other team's not even going to get a hit, right? It's like, it's going to be a shutout, like guaranteed, right? And I'd be like, okay, well, I throw as hard as Cole Hamels does. My curveball is very good like his, probably not quite as good as his, let's be honest, but why shouldn't I feel the same way, right? Maybe just because I'm not a known name, people don't think that, but like, I've got the same skills. I'm going to go out and dominate this team. They're not going to get a hit today, right? So I just used it as like a sounding board, as a way to say like, I'm doubting myself, I'm doubting my abilities, but my abilities are very similar to really, really good players who no one doubts, right? So if they don't get doubted, why do I doubt myself? So it doesn't matter. My big point in all this is a fun video to make because it gets me down memory lane, but the big thing with mental skills training is that you've got to make it your own, right? And I don't think I really started to understand until the end of my career and well past it, how much I really did make it my own, as evidenced by this short list of strange things that were going on in my head, right? And at the time, I didn't think a whole lot of it. I didn't think, oh, I'm really weird. I do all these weird I'm sure all of these different players and all these different sports have their own coping mechanisms and their own ways of psyching themselves out and of switching the narrative in their head and of having their self-talk feel personal and valuable and interesting to them, right? And these were just some of my ways, right? And there were other things that I did, but these were some of the core ones that really were like a tool in my toolbox at pivotal moments, right? So anyway, I hope this helps because I know that mental skills training can start to feel kind of formulaic and it's like the same advice, like, oh, breathe, be present, have a mindfulness practice. But like, what does that look like in practice? And sometimes it looks like this. Sometimes it looks like imagining yourself as a samurai, obviously as a baseball player, but like imagine yourself getting killed in your game, like just having the worst game and just being comfortable with that and saying, you know what, if that's the worst it can be, it's not that bad, right? Other people having conversations about you, and just not feeling like, oh, this weird thing that I'm doing is weird, but I'm going to do it anyway, right? Like for me, feeling self-conscious that other people saw me meditating. It's like, this is a training thing that I do. And I feel a little weird about it sometimes, but I'm still here for it, right? So whatever it is that you do to find your best mindset, you're going to find it at the long tail of a long trail of things that you've tinkered and tried, and some didn't work, some do work, but it's a big iterative process that you have to start with and just see what works for you and see what doesn't and try new things on and listen to people. Maybe you try one of the things that I've talked about today. And as a coach, maybe you can just introduce lots of different topics and ideas and see what sticks for your players, right? So anyway, without further ado, thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe because I have to say that, right? And I'll see you here in the next video.